I had always heard the legends of the Red Oni, but they were just stories to me. They were the kind of tales our elders would share around the fire, warnings meant to keep us kids in line. As I grew older, I stopped believing in them. Monsters weren't real, I told myself. They were just figments of our ancestors' imagination. But one fateful night in the mountains changed everything. It began as a simple hiking trip. My friends and I had decided to camp overnight deep in the forest. The day had been perfect. Clear skies, the crisp autumn air biting at our cheeks as we laughed and hiked together. But when the sun began to set, things started to unravel. We somehow got separated. I don't even remember how it happened. But one moment we were together, and the next I was alone. At first, I wasn't too worried. I had a flashlight, and I figured I'd eventually find my way back to the campsite. But as darkness settled in, I realized just how isolated I was. The mountain was vast, and the dense trees seemed to close in on me. My flashlight flickered weakly, casting long, distorted shadows that twisted with each step I took. Every sound felt amplified. The crunch of leaves underfoot, the distant rustle of branches, and, faintly, something else. I spotted a light ahead. Relief washed over me. I thought it was my friends. Maybe they found shelter. But as I moved closer, I realized the light was coming from inside a cave. The fire within flickered, casting strange dancing shadows on the cave walls. I hesitated at the entrance. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. The air was thick with the stench of something metallic, something rotten. I called out, hoping my voice would be answered, but the only response was my echo. My heart pounded in my chest, but I forced myself to step inside. The warmth of the fire was immediate, but so was the horror. Scattered around the cave were bones, human bones, their white surfaces gleaming in the firelight, and they were stripped clean. My stomach turned, and as I turned to flee, a deep, rumbling voice echoed from the darkness. "I've been waiting." From the shadows, a figure emerged, towering and monstrous. His skin was a deep blood red, and his eyes glowed like hot embers. It was an Oni, a real one. His horns curved upward from his head, and his massive body was draped in tattered, blood-stained clothes. I had never felt such primal terror in my life. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I just stood there frozen as the Oni grinned at me with sharp yellow teeth. "You shouldn't have come here," he growled, taking a step forward. His voice was like gravel grinding together, each word dripping with malice. I bolted, my legs finally responded, and I ran as fast as I could, my breath ragged and my heart threatening to burst out of my chest. Behind me, I could hear the heavy thud of his footsteps, the ground shaking beneath the weight of his pursuit. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The stories from my childhood flooded my mind. Stories of people who had vanished into these mountains, never to be seen again. The Oni was close. I could feel his hot breath on the back of my neck, the rancid stench of decay overwhelming my senses. My lungs burned. My legs felt like they were going to give out, but I ran faster than I ever thought possible. I don't know how, but I made it out of the cave and down the mountain. His laughter echoed behind me, a sound that still haunts me to this day. I never found my friends. Search parties scoured the area for days, but they never found anything. No traces, no signs of life. The cave, too, had vanished, as though it had never existed. But I know what I saw. The Red Oni is real, and he's still out there, waiting for the next lost soul to wander too far into his domain. I had never been one to believe in curses or spirits, but the day I bought that Oni Mask, everything changed. It was supposed to be a fun souvenir from my trip to Japan. I was wandering through the back alleys of Kyoto when I stumbled upon a tiny antique shop. Dust covered every surface, and the air was thick with the scent of incense. At the back of the shop, hanging on the wall, was the mask. It drew me in immediately. Its fierce expression, sharp tusks, and intricate design. The shopkeeper noticed my interest and approached me with a grave look in her eyes. "That mask," she said, "it belonged to an Oni. It's cursed. Be careful." I laughed it off, thinking she was just trying to add mystique to sell the mask. Besides, I didn't even believe in curses. I bought it and brought it back to my apartment, where I proudly hung it above the fireplace. It looked pretty awesome, adding an exotic touch to the room. For the first few days, nothing happened. life went on as usual. But then, the strange things began. It started with small noises at night, creaks and whispers that I couldn't explain. At first, I blamed it on the old building, figuring the apartment was just settling. But soon, it became more than just noises. I started seeing shadows, quick, fleeting movements in the corner of my eye. Every time I turned to look, nothing was there, yet the feeling of being watched was always constant. I tried to ignore it, but the sense of unease grew. One night as I lay in my bed, I had the overwhelming sensation that something was in the room with me. I sat up, heart pounding, and I glanced at the mask. Its eyes, once lifeless, seemed to shimmer in the dark, as if something was alive inside it. I got up, turned on the light, and stared at the mask. It was just a piece of carved wood, right? But then, it blinked. The mask blinked. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering in my chest. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. But before I could even process it, the mask's mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. "I see you," a voice whispered from nowhere, but yet everywhere. I ripped the mask off the wall, shaking with fear, and threw it into the closet. I told myself it was just my imagination, that stress was playing tricks on me. But that night, the dream started. Every night, I would see an Oni, its black skin gleaming, its glowing red eyes staring into mine. It would reach for me with long clawed fingers, whispering my name, telling me it was coming for me. The worst part was, no matter where I hid the mask, it always found its way back to that wall. I tried everything, throwing it in the river, burying it deep in the forest, burning it. Yet, every time I came home, there it was, staring at me with that twisted grin. I've stopped sleeping now. The shadows grow longer each night, and the whispers, they never stop. The Oni's coming for me. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. The well behind our house was ancient, older than anyone in our village could remember. My parents had always forbidden me from going near it. They said that it was cursed, that something dark had been sealed inside it long ago. An Oni, trapped by monks centuries ago. I thought it was just a story, one of those old superstitions meant to scare kids away from dangerous places. But one summer afternoon, my curiosity got the better of me. I'd been playing outside when I found myself wandering near the well. It stood at the edge of the forest, overgrown with weeds and covered with a heavy wooden lid. The air around it felt colder than the rest of the yard, a strange chill that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I stepped closer, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. "Don't be ridiculous," I muttered to myself. "It's just a well." But as I leaned in, peering at the cracks in the lid, I heard something, faint, like a whisper carried on the wind. I froze. The voice was soft, weak, almost pleading. My first instinct was to run, but something held me in place. It sounded so human. "Please," the voice came again, a little stronger this time. "I've been trapped down here for so long." I swallowed hard, glancing around. There was no one else nearby. No one could be playing a trick on me. The voice came from the well. My hand shook as I gripped the edge of the wooden lid. Who are you?" I called down. "I was like you once," the voice replied. "But they left me here. Please, lift the lid. Let me out." I shouldn't have done it. Even now, I know I should have listened to the warnings. But the voice, it sounded so desperate, so sad. With a grunt, I pushed the lid aside, my heart racing as a blast of cold air shot up from the well. For a moment, there was silence. Then a low rumbling laugh echoed from the darkness. "Fool!" A hand shot up from the darkness, long clawed fingers black as night wrapped around the stone edge of the well. I screamed and stumbled back, watching in horror as the figure began to pull itself out. Its skin was dark and cracked, like charred wood, and its eyes, they glowed with a malevolent fire. The Oni was free. I turned and ran, my legs barely carrying me as I sprinted toward the house. Behind me, I could hear the sound of something heavy climbing out of the well, its deep laughter echoing through the yard. I didn't stop running until I was inside, slamming the door behind me, my chest heaving in terror. For days I didn't go near the well, but at night I could hear it, scratching at the windows, whispering my name, telling me it was coming for me. The Oni was free, and it was only a matter of time before it found me again.